Beautiful Music presents Going Mental, a podcast discussing mental health from a personal to global scale. I'm your host, Eric Leibowitz, founder of Beautiful Music. Let's go mental. On today's episode, we have Dan Schteingart, creative arts therapist, music therapist in the Mount Sinai system. He's working with adults in inpatient psychiatry, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Dan, how are you?
I'm good, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the name Beautiful Music. Such a cool name.
Thank you. I can't resist a pun, as my friends.
It's too cool.
Yeah, they're very aware, too aware. And so it's been a while. We were in school together. I don't even know when the last time we spoke. So it's so good to reconnect with you in this medium. And I'm so excited to hear about your work. And so how long have you been at Mount Sinai?
Well, it's funny you asked that because actually next week will be exactly 4 years.
Wow.
So yeah, time flies, right?
It really does. It's crazy. But congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been great actually. I've been working here, as I mentioned, for 4 years. And just a little bit about me. I live in New York with my wife and my son, and I grew up in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Wow.
My entire family have been and are in the medical profession, from my grandfather, my father, my mother, my sisters, even my wife is a psychologist. So I was always kind of the black sheep of the family. I was like, I don't want to work in a hospital. I don't want to work in a medical field. I want to be a rock star. So I did have a 10 or 15 year career in TV production and music production, and kind of leaned more towards creative pursuits. I always have loved writing songs since I was probably 5, 6 years old. I got my first guitar when I was 10. I mean, I had a cheap pretend plastic one when I was 8, but my first real guitar when I was 10 for my 10th birthday.
Wow.
After that, I went to college out at USC in California. I got a degree in psychology. So after college, I moved up to Alaska for a couple of years, had a free season ski pass, and I worked as a DJ at a station on the weekends. And then I kind of said, well, okay, I'm going to move back down to the lower 48 and work in entertainment. So I did that. I moved to New York. I started to do production work at HBO. I worked in the on-air promo department for a lot of years. And then I started my own production company. But I kind of happened upon music therapy, and I said, wow, that is a perfect combination of my background, having a degree in psychology, being a musician. And I was like, I'm going to do that. So I went back to school kind of after having had a 10 or 15 year career in something else.
Wow.
Which, was definitely a struggle in some points because, I had to go back to school and not make full-time money and support my family and that sort of thing. But I did that and no regrets at all. And it's funny because now here I am working at a hospital, just like when I was little, I said that won't be me, but I love it. I really love what I do.
That's so great. I was surprised to hear you say that you decided to major in psychology. What led you in that direction?
It's a good question. I think, I had taken a lot of film and music classes, but then it gets to your junior year and you've done all of the, required classes and you have to declare a major. And I think, at some point I was just in discussions with family members and friends. And I said, yeah, I think, I'd like to study psychology. And I think it was kind of a broad enough field that it appealed to me. So I think it was half like you've got to declare something. And it was half, I kind of know a lot about that. I mean, to one part of what leads into my approach with music therapy is when I was little, probably about 9, 10 years old, I went to a psychoanalyst. He was a very well-respected psychoanalyst, but my mom, being a psychiatrist, thought, everyone should go to therapy, and kids, adults. So I ended up going to the psychoanalyst. And it's funny because in 5th grade, I met who became my best friend, and we realized that we went to the same therapist.
That's how you
So
make
we
a
would
good friend.
sometimes,
Yes.
yeah. So we no, we didn't realize that until after, a couple months, I guess, of us
Oh,
being
really?
friends. So anyway, so that kind of plays into a lot of my approach. I think is having the background, having gone to therapy when I was little, all the things that I did and didn't like about verbal psychotherapy, and
Mm,
also having a mother as a psychiatrist. One of my sisters is a psychologist. My wife is a psychologist. So it was kind of always all around me, just the notion of therapy in general. Um, so as a creative arts therapist, I tend to incorporate a lot of verbal psychotherapy into my music therapy as well. So,
mm,
for instance, in the work that I do here at the hospital, um, we have things from morning stretch to coping skills to creative writing, in addition to things that I do like songwriting and drum circles,
mhm.
and both individual songwriting and collaborative songwriting, group songwriting, guided relaxation, where I play guitar and kind of guide through relaxation techniques with the patients.
Mm.
And but I always really like to process with the patients verbally throughout, making music before, after, in the middle. And I think that that really helps crystallize for somebody awareness, um, healing, and whatever it is that they want to work on in therapy. Now, a lot of times patients in the hospital don't want to be in the hospital, especially on a psychiatric unit. So
Mhm,
a lot of the songs that we write, I would say more than half are about, wanting to go home, wanting to be free.
mhm.
Um, and that sort of permeates a lot of the themes in the songwriting that I find on the psychiatric unit.
I
Um,
see. And do you find that your approach is influenced by strictly, the psychoanalysis approach, or do you find like the analytical music therapy of Mary Priestley, or is it more Freudian? Does it combine well? Are you making it your own? How does that inform you?
Yes, it's a good question. I would say that the reason that I brought up the psychoanalysis when I was little is because that's exactly what I did not want to do in my therapy practice. So what I found annoying in psychoanalysis was answering a question with a question. Like you would ask,
Mm.
why is this? And then the therapist might say, well, why do you think? And that drove me crazy. So I definitely try and not do that when I'm with my patients, but I guess a lot of what I do is kind of taking the journey with the patients. So, in other words, I don't feel like I'm there to give them answers. I feel like I'm there to kind of go on the journey with them, to ask questions along with them of ourselves, of each other.
Yeah.
So sometimes I facilitate the group discussion through songwriting and through the drumming. And as I
Mm.
mentioned, kind of interspersing the verbal processing, coping skills, stress management, anger management, abuse, trauma, substance abuse, whatever it is that we're talking about. But for instance, if we're doing a group about anger management, I might say, um, what are some coping skills that you find work for you? And, people might throw out, well, listening to music or breathing or counting or art. And so we kind of develop long-term strategies and short-term strategies. And I might say, well, the other day I was on the subway and not recently, but I was
Uh,
on the subway and the doors closed, and there was a lot of people, and I was getting kind of anxious. So I didn't have the option of listening to music because I didn't have maybe my phone with me. I didn't have the option of doing artwork. I didn't have the option of exercising. So what could I do right in the moment? And so then it becomes a discussion with, people are bouncing ideas off each other like, oh, well, I would
mm.
maybe count, or I might, close my eyes and think of a relaxing beach. So it's kind of in the process of discussing these things, um, kind of fostering both a therapeutic bond and also a way for somebody to think about this on their own, asking questions for themselves.
I love that approach. I think that it's really important for me to start with, but also in therapy work, to have the realizations come up naturally as opposed to forced upon, like where there may be a
Mhm.
hierarchy between therapist and client, but really it's about the teamwork, the therapeutic relationship, and engaging in that dialogue, I think is really important. And I think
Right.
it's also really interesting to just think about songwriting as this means to explore so many different types of things and things that people are dealing with and the emotions that come up. And I'm kind of interested in what the process looks like because you also said that this therapy in the hospital is a journey. Not only is it a journey from enter to leave or from, you know, ailment to healing, but also in terms of songwriting, it kind of encapsulates it very well, where there's the writing process, but then when you have a finished song, the song
Hmm.
is a journey in itself too. So I'd love to hear more about what the journey is like with songwriting.
Yes, and it's interesting because for a long time, we would start out, and I would say, what are you guys feeling today? What do you guys think that a theme would be maybe for a song that we'll create, or do you guys just want to improvise? And I kind of open up the discussion to the group as to what are we doing here? What do you guys want to do? And I'll put up a piece of paper on the wall. We used to have a whiteboard in the room that we used, but
Mm,
now with COVID, we kind of moved to a bigger room. So I put up a little
mm,
piece of paper,
mhm.
big piece of paper, and we'll just start improvising. And I'll say, what is this song about? I might even sing, what is this song about? And then people will just start, either freestyling or calling out lyrics, words, and I'll ask somebody who wants to be the scribe, and I'll give the marker to somebody.
A sacred position, the scribe.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So to kind of empower them to take ownership of, leading the group, they can take turns being the scribe. They can write each line themselves if they want. So we start to
Mm,
improvise, and I or the scribe or whoever else is going to write, some of the ideas that we have. We might start and stop a few times, and then I kind of try to somewhat structure it as, this might be our verse one, this might be what should our chorus be, what is this song really about, and then that will lead them to say, well, I think it's about being free or going home, or I really want
mhm.
to talk about that it's a sunny day outside. It could be a whole lot of things.
Right.
So in doing that, I think that the process becomes both verbal and music. Once that's created, and I say, well, maybe we could have a bridge here. The bridge sometimes takes the character arc, if you will, of the song from the beginning to the end, or sort of like a reflection on where you're going from where you've been,
Mhm,
or how you get to the resolution of the song. Um, and so I kind of try to intersperse some songwriting techniques into what I'm doing.
mhm.
And then recently, in the last few months, we've been actually recording the songs with which the patients really like.
Wow.
So I have an 8-track mixer, and then I've I've been compiling and mixing down, and then I'll take a rough cut into maybe a group the next day or a few days later, and I'll say, okay, let's do you want to work on the song that we were working on earlier in the week, and then we'll kind of hone it, and we'll develop more lyrics, or we'll change instruments, or we'll arrange it, and then eventually I will have something for them to either take home with them, or if they want it. Sometimes they don't, sometimes
Mm,
they do.
mhm.
um, Sometimes it exists as their space while they were in the hospital, and sometimes people are like, yeah, please, give that to me before I leave.
Mm. It's also a great totem of sorts of something that can really be charged with a lot of healing energy and can be contextualized as such and can kind of inspire the same healing feelings when they leave. So I think that's one of the things about songwriting that I think is so cool. And I love this aspect of songwriting is the interest that people have in it and the openness to really explore it because I feel at first there's some resistance to it because we have these ideas of, oh, well, I'm not this songwriter. How could I write a song? And does that resistance come up in this process? And if it does, how do you encourage people to engage in this beautiful process of songwriting?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Somebody might say, and that happens quite often, I'm not a musician. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Oh, I can't be in this group. I don't know how to write a song, or, oh, I don't do music. And I usually stress to them, I say, well, there's no right or wrong here. We're just here to explore. We're here to express. And, you know, there's no judgment. So I think that kind of opens them up to feeling free,
Hmm.
basically, not
Mm.
feeling like they have to do something specific. A lot of times you'll have some patients that are either professional musicians, classically trained musicians, and I would say that it kind of runs both ways. Sometimes they are less likely to want to do music while they're in the hospital because that's something that might take away from what they usually do. But at the same time, a lot of times I find that those patients are more open about singing or kind of
Mm.
exploring more, and that opens up the other group members to doing that too. Oh, it's okay to play the xylophone. Oh, it's okay to hit this drum.
You're doing some really great songwriting. I'm also wondering what the role of pre-recorded music is like in the hospital. If there's anybody that you're working with where you notice pre-recorded music coming in, those pre-recorded songs, what is that like in inpatient?
Yes, good question. So I actually have a group that I call Music Listening and Psychotherapy, which now with the availability through different platforms of the immediacy of songs, I will sit down and we'll sit in a circle and I'll say, okay, everybody can choose a song, any song that reflects how you're, something that you're thinking about today, how you're feeling today, something you want to express, but you don't have to do it verbally. You'll choose a song that does that for you.
Okay,
So
cool.
then I'll pull up, everybody will say their song, some might think about it for a second, and then the group will listen to each person's song. I'll pull it up on Spotify and I'll have a big speaker so that they can get, a good listening experience. And then we'll verbally process each song. It'll start with the person that chose the song. Why did you choose this song? And the person might say, I chose this song, The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston, because I have to learn to love myself. And then we talk about the importance of self love, self care, self awareness.
Mm.
Um, and so that really sort of jump starts the verbal processing is the pre recorded music.
Wow, what a great medium and a great way to open one up to expressing. It kind of feels like it would make it a little more bearable to talk about it when it's already encapsulated in a pre-recorded song.
Right. A lot of times I find that the beauty of music therapy is that it seems to be an indirect way to approach somebody, what somebody's thinking about, but I find it to be a more direct way because and
Mm,
rather than sitting across the couch from somebody and just saying, okay, what are you thinking about? And the person either feeling pressure or embarrassment, they can say, this song, I really like this song.
mhm.
And maybe it's something about the artist, maybe it's something about the lyrics, maybe it's just something about the feel or the tempo. And
Yeah.
to kind of dive in deeper with that, then may open up the person to saying, yeah, I heard this song. I used to listen to this song with my grandmother, and she's not around anymore. It makes me think of my grandmother, and I miss her. And those were the good times in my life, something like that. So I think that the possibilities are endless when you kind of kickstart it with listening to music.
That's really powerful.
Also, I'll say that about 10 years ago, I was recruited to be the New York chapter leader of a songwriting organization,
Oh,
and
wow.
I kind of started a an open mic from that, which has been going for 10 years now. So I the funny thing is at the open mic that I started, a lot of musicians will come in and they have the same reservations as people that are quote unquote not musicians that I experience in the hospital. And a lot of times people will come in and say, "Oh, I'm not sure if I can go up on stage, or I'm
Mm,
nervous." And so I explore the same kind of things with a lot of the songwriters that are playing out in public, And I think it's just a natural human emotion to be reticent sometimes to explore musically.
Wow. A music therapist as an open mic host sounds like the ideal open mic scenario. You're gonna have so much encouragement. That's so great for that open mic and for the people who play there.
It's been hard because the last few months, obviously, we haven't been able to
Ah,
have it.
yeah.
And um, I was just going to say about it that it's been going on a long time, and it's become kind of a community, a family.
Hmm.
It's almost like Cheers, you know. A lot of people know each other. There's an influx of new people, and there's a lot of old old timers there. You know, people that have been there throughout the years,
Hmm.
and it's becomes like a really cool, supportive community of musicians that are there to hear songs, to share things, to enjoy.
It's so beautiful. And the idea of freedom is really ringing with me right now because you said that a lot of times songs in the hospital are written about the feeling, wanting to feel free. And then also you said that
Hmm.
there's a feeling of feeling free to play or free to explore instruments within the group. And I just think that's so powerful. And I'm wondering if you can or can think of something you'd like to share about something you've seen in your work that really stuck with you, that you've seen the power of creative arts therapy or verbal processing in an inpatient
Hmm.
unit.
Sure. I would say that I usually see it really powerfully in drum circles. Usually in drum circles with psychotic or disorganized or anxious patients, I find that in a drum circle, the patient can become focused and calm, grounded, and a lot of times I'll explore with them what is your tempo or pitch, what is your tone, and that kind of plays in. All of these musical elements play into how somebody might interact socially. So, for instance, being aware when you're drumming back and forth with somebody, are you sort of interrupting or stepping on them? Are you giving them space to hear them and then responding? And
Mm,
sometimes we'll even do little activities where, you know, two people in a dyad will do sort of like a call and response with drums. So
mhm,
somebody might drum something, and then they might keep drumming and drumming and drumming. And the point was to kind of have a conversation. So then,
mm,
you know, we'll stop and we'll say, okay, were you able to stop at a certain point and listen back to have the other person say something back to you? And then they might say, oh, okay, I understand. And then they'll drum and then they'll stop and have the other person say something back to them. So in that exercise, then we'll verbally process that afterwards as,
mm,
you know, when you're walking out into the hallway, if somebody's talking to you, you might take the time to listen to what they were saying back to you. Or, you know, you might have a conversation with somebody and maybe the conversation didn't go well. Maybe examining how loud was your voice? How fast were you speaking? Were you leaving space for the other person to respond? So that's what I find beautiful in the music therapy sessions where we do drum circles is for, like I mentioned, a psychotic disorganized patient that has trouble sitting still or having impulse control issues or making no sense in anything that they talk when they're talking, make complete sense in the music and have the
ah,
ability to ground and focus.
amazing. There are so many studies out there that show music's ability to organize and categorize, and it seems separate, but organization of thoughts is really organization of behaviors and organization of different types of processes in our lives. And it's so powerful to see something that can be seen as simple as drumming can have such a profound effect. And is there some self-awareness and, like, when it's being processed about how they are able to organize these thoughts? What is that experience like for these patients?
Yeah. I think the coolest thing about group therapy for me is hearing other people help each other. Like
Mm,
I'm there as the facilitator, but to have one patient help another through experience, or somebody to share an experience and then realize or help it crystallize for themselves as they're sharing it and
mm,
say, oh yeah, I guess I do that. Um, or having them share an experience about trauma and
mm.
saying, yeah, maybe I can actually incorporate that into understanding why I'm angry. Um, and the beauty of it for me is seeing this interaction between patients and the kind of awareness that comes about both through sharing and through listening.
It's really good to know that there are means for people who are struggling with mental issues to kind of feel sense of self confidence. And I'm wondering if you do any work with the residents about being more informed about their illness and how in coping mechanisms or education. Is there anything like that happening on the unit?
Yeah, absolutely. We do a group called Stop Stigma. It's a psychoeducation group where there's basically a survey. So for the first 5 or 10 minutes, patients will do kind of a checkbox on all of these sort of statements, such as patients or people with mental illness are violent, agree or disagree. So then
Hmm.
patients will mark agree or disagree. Um, all people with mental illness are born with it and they'll have it their whole lives. Agree or disagree. Um, Someone with a mental illness should not have a high level position in any job. Agree or disagree. So then we'll have a fact sheet of things such as the violence myth, and it might say, we'll read it. Well, I'll distribute the fact sheets to everybody, and everyone will take turns reading a response for each of the items, and they'll find that um, it's as likely to be struck by lightning as to be killed by somebody with mental illness, and that people with mental illness are much more likely to be victims of violence, and that this violence myth kind of is what prevents a lot of people from either getting a job or from being accepted in their community or their family, and to then empower them to take that information home to then be the ones that are educating their friends, their family, other people in the community, and sort of putting them in the role not only of someone struggling with a diagnosis, but somebody that can actually make a difference.
Sounds like you're doing really great work, Dan.
Thanks.
I'm so happy to hear that. And you are working full time in the hospital, but you're also expanding into private practice.
Yes. Thanks for asking. I started a practice about a year ago. It's called Manhattan Music Therapy. You can find me at manhattanmusictherapy.com. You can also call me at 833 NYC Therapy. And I look forward to continuing to build that practice as well as my work at the hospital.
You are on an amazing journey of your own. And do you have any music projects coming out?
Good question. I'm actually working right now on a song with some of my students, and I also teach usually in the evenings, kind of after work online, now remote. But I have a group of students that I teach both guitar and piano to, and so that's a project that I'm beginning with them, is to kind of spread the word about the necessity of wearing masks and using the power of young voices to do that.
Mm, sounds like a great mission. Yes, and it's so good to connect with you. I've learned so much talking to you, and I hope that our listeners at home have also learned a great deal. And feel free to learn more about Dan and his private practice and the work that he's doing. ManhattanMusicTherapy.com, 833 NYC Therapy. Great number, gotta say. Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. It's a pleasure and would love to have you back and look forward to hearing more about all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you have a healthy and peaceful day. Thank you so much.